Hey friends, welcome to a new video here on the channel. Today we're going to be doing a journal with me in the Our Studio journal, which I'm using as my book of little joys for the year. I am really having a fun time inside of it, and I'm mostly up to date, and I intend to keep it that way for as long as possible. So if that's something that you're interested in, go ahead and keep on watching. So I think the last time I talked about this journal specifically on the channel, aside from the newest video, which had it was a short little journaling session. The last time I spoke about it, I believe I was setting this up as a creative journal where I was going to do my color dots a day and the daily haikus. I'm like almost certain that's what I talked about when I did the setup for it. But since then it's changed. Because of the surgery, the gallbladder surgery that I had and the recuperation period, there was a long time that I wasn't able to be in my journals. And so I was very behind and that was stressing me out. So I decided to shift it and go back to what I think was my original plan, which was making this my little, well, I guess my original plan was more of it being a memory keeper, like a photo heavy memory keeper, but I've decided to name it like my Little Joys journal, which is a similar concept to maybe what Courtney does from Little Raven Inc., where she does, at least last year, she used the Hours journal as a gratitude journal. And I think that it's a similar concept in my case because all of the things that I'm putting in here are things that make me happy, things that I'm grateful for. I think I also spoke about this in the previous video, but I'm someone who doesn't typically really worry about the separation of like the bad and the good. I know that for a lot of people, having kind of like heavy feeling, negative feelings present in their journaling next to the journaling that is meant to bring them joy is something that is counterintuitive for them. And for the most part, that's not something that I really struggle with. If you know, you know, I'm a type 4 on the Enneagram, so I'm really comfortable with a lot of like negative emotions and witnessing them or seeing them. But in this particular notebook, I decided that I was going to, I guess, what's the word? I'm drawing blanks here, but basically I was going to full throttle do just happy stuff so that every single page that I turned on here or flipped through in here would bring me joy. And I have been able to do that. So for the most part, I really struggle with printing. I tend to not print very often, but I've developed a system where every week I create a little template and I print it out and I use my cutting machine to cut the images out, which is much faster than me cutting them manually. And so I tend to avoid using the cutting machine because it's a bit of a hassle to set up. But after I can kind of get past my little mental roadblock of turning on the machine, getting in the silhouette, the cutting mat, whatever, after I can get past that little roadblock, it really is super time saving to use the cutting machine, and I get the added benefit of really straight lines on the images, which is something that sometimes, not always, but sometimes does bother me a bit when the squares aren't perfectly straight, which is so weird because I'm really not the type of person that cares about things like that, about like straightness or perfection, and especially when it comes to journaling, it's not really something that I super care about. But sometimes I get a little annoyed when my lines are wonky on images, especially when they're smaller. So like these kind of smaller squares, it can be a little annoying when the lines aren't straight. And I mean, I have the cutting machine, why not use it, right? Like I made the investment because I wanted to do like printers. I wanted to do sticker sheets and do all that for the shop. And even though physicals aren't something that I'm doing right now, and that is still a little bit in the future, I have the machine, so why not use it, right? And so the system that I've kind of established for printing and cutting the images in this journal and in the tan, which is another journal that I've changed the use for. Since the last time you guys would have seen it on YouTube, my Patreons know because I do weekly updates there. But the tan is something that I'm using as a media journal companion, and it's also like a commonplace journal, a little bit, a place to collect kind of my thoughts and quotes and all that jazz. And I will showcase that in some video at some point soon. But the system that I've established to be able to print up images for that journal and this journal has really helped, and I'm pretty up to date on it. So that's really fun, I think, because one of the things that's difficult, and a lot of you will know, is the backfilling, the backlogging. It can be really tedious, and so, like, again, a mental block to get you in your journal. And so I've been trying really hard to get that routine and stay on top of it, and I've been enjoying it a lot. You kind of saw there, I was in the monthly pages of the Hours Journal. I decided to do kind of like have a space for fan art. If you've been here a while, you know that in 2024 I had a fan art kind of dedicated journal, but then I also did a lot of fan art in my media journal that I had in the Common Planner and One journal. But I didn't really have a space for fan art right now. I could kind of put it in the tan, but that's not what I'm intending for that space. But I decided to use it in the monthly, and I really like how that's looking. So far that's been fun. Here in the free notes section, I recently did an ink swap with Maike over at Maike Oatley on YouTube, Cat Collage Club. You might know her through that. And she sent me this cute little letter, and I wanted to put it in here because I decided that, as this is also a little Joy's journal, that I would put like the letters that I got from Happy Mail and stuff in here, because that's also things that make me happy. So I'm using the back pages for that. And I'm using this glue that I was sent over from Barely Art, and they kindly sent this over to me to try it out. And one of the things that I was really interested is that it says that it's wrinkle free, and it's also archival, which is really, really nice. I'm always looking for new glues, especially with like collage. I'm planning on using this a lot during February, because that's something that I'm hoping to participate in the month of February. And this one was really nice. I'm really grateful that they reached out and sent it over to me to try it out. There was a little bit of wrinkling that happened on this page, but I think that was probably my fault. I didn't do a great job at kind of laying the paper. You'll see that in a bit. I also didn't want to use the precision little nibs that they send that I'll show you a little later. I decided to use a tool that I have that's really meant for clay and use it as a spatula. And you should do with glue like this, thin layers. It felt very similar to matte medium if you've used it before. It is very liquidy. And yeah, I think that if I would have done a better job at placing it, that it might have reacted better and not as wrinkly. But I am going to be putting it to the test in February, like I mentioned, for a lot of collages, and we shall see if it is in fact wrinkle free. But I will showcase in a second the box so you guys can see all of the different aspects that the glue has that make it a really interesting glue and a good option. I did enjoy the fact that I didn't get sticky fingers from it, at least. So that was a pro because it is so watery. And it does dry clear, even though it goes on white. So yeah, just gluing that in there. It's so lovely. I think I might do some journaling on the other side, write about it. But I haven't 100% decided. At least in this session, I just glued it in to be able to keep that here in my little Joy's journal, if you will. So here's me showing you that it has 3 different tips that it comes with. And then I'm going to show you the box now, and you can pause if you'd like, but some of the things that it says is that it's non-toxic, acid-free, photo-safe, archival, it dries clear, it has those tips, it's flexible so it resists cracking, it's wrinkle-resistant, clump-resistant, design tough, design durable, and it thaws if it's frozen, so you're able to use it all year. So those are some of the pros of this glue, and like I said, I will be using it more later on in February and seeing how it behaves. So I'll get back to you on that. But thank you again to Barely Art for sending that my way to try out. Have you ever put a supply away only to realize you're gonna have to get it again because you want to use it? That was me with the glue here. That was a little Happy Mail cover page situation. Maddie sent me some Happy Mail a few months back, and I was still holding on to this particular part of it. And as I was cleaning, I decided that I would put it in this journal, which is why it was there in the back in the beginning of the video, if you noticed. And I decided to put it right here in front of the free note. What's it called? Cover page, because I didn't really need it to have that title. And now it's gonna live there. And eventually I'm gonna put some lettering on it, but I couldn't figure out exactly what I wanted to letter on it. So for now, it's just gonna live there by itself, and eventually that will grow and evolve. And I'm excited to see what that ends up looking like at the end of the year. And so here I'm just deciding what fountain pen and ink combination I'm going to use in this particular spread. And I ended up deciding on using the Hongdian 1862. And this one is filled in with Tundra, if I'm not mistaken, from the Diamond Ink Vent 2024 calendar. Actually, let me confirm. Yep, Tundra. And I have had mixed results with this particular pen. There are some papers where it does some skipping, and I think with this one, with the Hours Journal, I didn't experience much of that, but it has happened in other papers. Like, it happens to me in the Baumkuchen insert, it happens to me in the TN Midori cream paper insert as well. And let's see, have I used it on another paper? I haven't used it in the weeks, so I'm not sure there. I think that's it. I think that those two, and then of course, like in random papers, like sometimes I will get a post-it and write something quickly, and if this is the first pen I can get to, it does skip a little bit. I'm gonna try it with a non-shimmering ink. Actually, I think Tundra is not a shimmering ink. I'm pretty sure Tundra is a standard ink and still does some skipping. It did have some skipping when I first inked it with, what was the black ink name? But the black ink of the Diamond Ink Vent set had, I think it's Good Tidings, it had extreme sheen, and so I thought it was that. But yeah, it's still skipping with this particular ink. I'm thinking, I don't know, what do you guys suggest? Can I sand it down a little bit? Would that help? Or is there something I can do? I don't know. It's not super annoying depending on the paper. So like, for example, this little session I did with the Hour Studio Journal, there was hardly any skipping. It worked just fine. But yeah, that's something that's been a little annoying about the Hongdian, which is unfortunate. But I mean, it was not an expensive pen, so I'm not super pressed about it. That there's just a little bit of issues, I guess, with writing. But yeah, I'm gonna be just filling up some writing and adding the captions to the rest of the spreads for most of the rest of the video. Let's see, is there anything else that I wanted to talk about too? I've just been having a lot of fun using, aside from being able to print the images on time, I've been printing memes. Like there's that, I recently talked to my patrons about it. That meme there that you see Hello Kitty, it says something like, born to be a hater, forced to understand where you're coming from. And it makes me laugh every single time. And that's the point, right? Like opening this journal, I want to be confronted with happiness and joy and laughter, and it's been working out really, really well. So I'm really excited to use it. I have been using my printables in it. I really want to showcase my printables, so you see that in most of the spreads so far. And that way, as I continue to progress in the year, I'll be able to see my progress in terms of being an artist and all that jazz. So that's really nice. Seeing when someone sends me something, printing that out, and then having a space for the fan art as well and the monthlies. I don't know. I'm just really excited to see what this notebook is going to end up looking like at the end of the year. Yeah, I mean, I'm excited to see how all of them are going to look like, but I think this one specifically is going to be special just because there are going to be so many images. And last year, I didn't really have a space for that. I feel like in the beginning of the year, I tried doing that with the TN insert where I wanted it to be like a big book of everything, which I also tried to do this year as well with one of the inserts, and it just doesn't work. I think I can't do that as well. I think this is as close as it's going to get to being a big book of everything because I am going to have some of the fan art, which will represent some of the media that I was watching, and then a lot of the picture heavy stuff. I did something similar in 2023, but definitely not in 2024. And having been in this for the past couple of weeks and all of January, I guess, I can definitely tell that I love it. Even if I struggle with the printing process, kind of having this new system, hopefully I can sustain it long enough where it isn't a problem. But I also think that it's one of those notebooks where it's forgiving with the backlogging, because the images themselves are going to remind me of what happened. It's not like with daily logging that if I don't write it down, I'll forget it, which is something that does tend to happen to me with my TN insert. If like I don't write down the instances that I want to remember, I will forget them. But since there are images in this particular journal, and that's what I'm focusing on, the images themselves will remind me of the memory that I want to capture. And so that's a little easier, and that's why I think it's a bit more forgiving than one of the notebooks that's more writing heavy, which is also, I think, one of the reasons why I keep a media log. That way, whenever I want to write about certain pieces of media, it's a little easier to remember what it was that I was watching and reading and listening to, even though if I don't write like the quote or something like that, I won't remember. But yeah, I think that this is going to be a fun little journal, and I'm excited to see how it continues to expand and grow as the months continue. How have you guys been feeling with your journals? I know that there's quite a few people that I've been following that have done complete revamps, that have gone back to what they were using in 2024, but there's also some that are really, really enjoying their new journals. I know that there's a few people that had to switch things up and are frustrated because of bleed through in the Hobonichi or in Kimbor's or whatever journals they're using. So how are you feeling in your journals? Have you done any changes? Have you kept it the same? Are you regretting any of the decisions you made? I think that something that I see often is kind of like this shame surrounded by wanting to change your systems that you somehow talked about so lovingly at the time of sharing them. But I don't think there's anything to be ashamed of if you decide that something that you were excited about and wanted to use didn't end up working and you ended up changing it. When I started the TAN this year, it was supposed to be like my everything when it came to functional planning, and I used it for like 3 days and realized, no, actually, this idea that I had for this journal isn't working. And instead of sitting with that and trying to make it work, I just changed it and I started using it as a media journal companion so that I could use it for something. Because I always like trying to see if I could use it for something. That's not always something that's possible. If you saw my tier ranking video, you saw that there are some notebooks that didn't end up getting used last year, and it's unfortunate, yeah, but I don't think it's something to necessarily be ashamed of. Like, you chose that journal or that system because you thought it was going to work, and then it didn't, and that just means that you need to change it up. And I think that everyone here in this, at least in the niche that I've kind of created around the content that I create, I don't think that anyone would judge you for that. Like, or like, I feel like most people would understand, especially in this community, that like sometimes what you think is going to work just doesn't, and that's okay. So in case you needed any reminder, do not be ashamed if you need to change up your journaling systems or change up any of your systems that you thought were going to work for you in the moment you thought they were going to work, and then they didn't. And that is fine. That's just indicative of the fact that we change. And you never know. I think I talk about this in the ink video that I'm gonna share in the next couple of days with the ink swap that I did with Mike. That sometimes you have a plan, and until you execute it, you don't know if it is the perfect plan or not, and that's just how it goes. That's why in the scientific method you have a hypothesis and then you test it. Oh, I'm watching the video and I just made a huge mistake here. That should have been a W, and that is the ugliest W I've ever written in my life. And so to fix it, I decided to glue on a post-it. I was so mad, but honestly, it looks really good. So, you know, a win is a win, and I was able to cover that mess up. And so we're moving on as if it never existed to begin with. Happy accidents, as Bob Ross would say. Something I really like too is that I do have like little templates that I'm trying to use for the pictures to make it a little easier on myself when I'm going to print them. But I'm also not being super, like sometimes I will make rules for myself that end up hindering me instead of helping me. I like having certain rules for certain things because having those constraints can be helpful. That's something that I talk about a lot when I'm talking about like participating in challenges or prompted material. But sometimes the rules can be a little bit too stifling and can cause problems. And so like for example, this spread looks very cohesive because pretty much every single picture followed the template that I have for the images, and I really like how it looked. But as you noticed in the following weeks, or even in the previous weeks, not all of the images are the same size. And so kind of showing up with the intention of having a template to make it easier on myself when I can't really make a lot of decisions, but then also being okay with if an image calls for a slight deviation of the template, that's fine as well. And so I like that because it makes for really dynamic and different spreads. Sometimes if it's too similar, I'll get bored. And so having the option to kind of switch things up and not necessarily have a repeatable pattern every single week, I feel like it's really nice because, again, it's dynamic, it's different, and I can see which ones I like, which ones I don't like. I really enjoyed this spread, and I liked having all of the images kind of look like specimens in their little boxes, even though they are not tied to the specific day. That's something else that I'm being very, I guess, particular about is that, or I guess I'm not being particular about it. Rather, the pictures do not have to match the day. Like it's not a day per, or rather a picture per day situation. It's really just to reflect what happened in the week. Oops, sorry, hit the mic. It's a week overview, not a daily overview. So I'm not really paying attention to the dates per se in terms of, oh, that picture with the bouquet it arrived on the 13th. Like it might, but it also might not. And that's okay. But yeah, I'm really enjoying kind of being able to play with the layout every week, and maybe one week it'll be a layout that I don't actually particularly like, and that's fine. You skip, or rather you'll turn the page and it'll be fine. You can do something different the next week. And so I'm really enjoying that aspect of this journal as well. Here I am looking at my actual journal as I am going to talk about this because I want to make sure that I say it right. So this little section here that I was writing on sundoku, which is a Japanese word, if I'm not mistaken, and it means collecting books and letting them pile up for the joy of knowing they're there, not for neglect. They're there full of untold stories. I really felt that resonated with me, which is why I added it there. So also like not everything that brings me joy has to be a memory. It could also just be little tidbits, right? Like I know Claire from online is someone who does this a lot, where they collect a lot of memes, and like we spend a lot of time, or at least I spend a lot of time. I guess I'll talk about myself on social media, wherever that is, and it's a big part of my life. And so I want to make sure that I also collect and memory keep the things that bring me joy that exist within my online world. And so like screen caps of conversations that I have and text message that I have, or messages on my Discord. I want to keep those as well. Those haven't made it on here just yet, but I definitely will be adding them. That's another thing that I'm going to be adding. And talking about books, I'm going to talk about this in another video. There's a video that I'm planning on making that I still haven't decided 100% how it's going to go, related to like 2025 updates to all of my platforms on YouTube and on Patreon and on Substack and my website, and kind of like the future of the channel and the type of content that I want to make, because I do want to continue making journaling content, but I also want to make other types of content, right? Like I'm also an artist, I'm also a writer, I love reading. And so I recently put out a poll talking about, or asking you guys if you'd be interested in bookish content, and a lot of you said that yeah, you would be interested, and there are some of you that said that you wouldn't be, and that makes absolute sense. But I am thinking of adding to the roster of the type of content that I'm going to be making. Like for example, I've already started making ink videos, which to an extent is somewhat related to journaling, but not 100% so. Like not everyone that's in the ink community is also in the journaling community, although a lot of people do kind of like mesh. And, you know, not everyone that's in the journaling community is in the bookish community, but a lot of us, at least, again, the niche that I've kind of surrounded myself by, are very into commonplacing and seeking knowledge and reading and all that jazz. And so I don't think that it's super off to say, hey, I want to add bookish content, but then also just like artistic content. I'm working on ideas about vlogs and things like that. But some of that content will live on Patreon and some of that content will live on YouTube. All to say that those are some of the things that I've been thinking about lately too, right? Like how I want to show up on this platform and all of the other platforms that I'm on. And so some changes will be happening, but I will still be making journaling videos. That's not going to change. It's just, you know, supplemental content aside from just the journaling videos, not replacing them. And so there is going to be a dedicated video about that, but I just wanted to mention it here too because it's been on my mind. And yeah, I think I'm just gonna let the rest of the footage play. I don't think I have anything else that I really wanted to say particularly. I might jump in if I see anything specific on screen, but for the most part, I'm just gonna let the rest of the video play with music. Thank you so much for being here, for joining me, for subscribing if you're subscribed. Welcome to return viewers, welcome back, or rather, welcome back to return viewers and welcome to new viewers if you're here. I really love sharing my journals and a bit about my life, and I love talking about these sort of things with you guys, and so I'm grateful to have the platform to do that. And yeah, thank you so much for watching, and I will catch you later. Bye.